Was gone this morning in Boston with a friend, and she had a couple of appointments. And she did some FaceTime, and the dog was part of the FaceTime. And when we hung up, I put the phone down on the chair, and she barked at the phone and nudged the phone
Yes, yeah.
toward me.
There you go. Well, we're gonna have a quorum this evening, that's good. We need a quorum live, and Scott will be joining us via Zoom. Thank you, Scott, for being there.
Thank you. No.
I heard from both Chris McAleer and Kathy Dougherty that they are not going to be available this evening.
Last meeting I missed, I'm sorry about that. I had a medical issue that popped up, and so I was being cared for at the time in Michigan.
One that was for you or that you were attending to?
No, it was for me.
Hard to know when you got
Yes, I know.
three doc guys, you
Yeah.
know? All right, so that means that both of you will be voting this evening.
Okay.
Do we start this meeting officially or what?
Sure, yeah.
Pardon?
Yes.
Okay. Recording or what?
I got Dick coming on board too.
All right. By the way, for alternates, when we have to fill a slot, according to the regs, it's by seniority, and that doesn't mean how old you are. So you get to be the senior alternate.
Oh, geez. Well, I'll be I won't be here for the next 3 meetings, so
Well,
unless I Zoom it.
you can.
Yeah,
If you like.
next one if you had, I'll be on the
It
road.
could be interesting.
Yeah,
But yours will look more like this, right?
yeah. There would be palm trees in the background.
You always do it by Zoom.
Yeah,
Where do you go?
Sanibel.
Oh, nice.
I don't think I have anybody else. Camera's on.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess first order of business.
7:05. We've determined who the,
We just determined who's going.
so the minutes, did everybody get copies of the minutes and the agenda is at the end of the table?
We have print stuff if you need it. Look at it. Pay attention to some of this stuff.
Yeah, got the minutes there.
No.
Minutes are there.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a new minutes taker.
Yeah.
Boy, is he something.
I know, I'm trying.
It's okay.
It's all one sentence. No, I'm just kidding.
That's the way I write. I'm not the writer. Trust me, I am not the writer in
I'm
the
not a
house.
writer either.
No, I'm not the writer in the house.
Any changes? For not a writer, he wrote a lot. I'll take responsibility for editing errors. And translating it into English.
Yeah, I know. I talked to Barb. I'm going to send them to her first. See if she can. me do that first.
Well, I like, the early version was that, that was the alternative bennett,
Yeah.
which is good, you know? Actually, it's a better descriptor, but.
Come on, it's a real word, so spell check doesn't catch it for me.
Right, exactly, yeah. You caught that, Dick, right?
Yes.
You were the alternative Bennett.
No, you didn't see that one.
You didn't,
I always said them to you.
you don't get to see those.
No, they don't get to see those.
But in the draft, that's what you were, instead of an alternate, you were an alternative.
I am an alternative.
Exactly. So I thought it was a very good descriptor, but I had to change it. All right, do I have a motion to accept?
I move that we accept.
All right, second?
I'll second that.
All right, get a motion, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, hearing none, let's move on. Any, we have members of the public today, finally, we have public members today. Any comments about something that's not on the agenda? We have somebody attending via Zoom.
Mhm.
You're welcome to make any comment now. Otherwise, we'll move forward.
Okay.
I believe you are,
Yeah. Okay, I'm just really here to follow the rules.
welcome.
Yeah. We have a 20-acre lot that I want to chop off a 4 or 5 acre parcel of it. And HEB engineers is going to do the surveying and stuff. It's only a preliminary thing. Basically, it's all in a good area. I don't think there's any, this is the main
I'll put
property.
up the microphone.
Whoa.
The main property of all the ponds. The parcel I want to cut out is up on the back part, and it's all in a good soil area and everything else, so.
Sorry, Dick and Scott, we didn't get any preliminary drawings for this, so there are no
No.
copies for you.
No, Kevin Tilton from HEB will be doing, so the next time I come in, we'll have some drawings and pretty much I know the steps on everything we have to do and everything, but I just wanna get started on, this is a 10,000 square foot house is getting kind of big for 2 people. So we're kind of thinking that maybe we'll get into a smaller piece.
I'll trade with it, John, if you want. Straight up trade.
That's the lot right before you get to your house then.
The what?
The lot right before you get to your
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right here.
Now, this is that another lot?
That's a 5-acre lot that was sold.
Okay, so you're talking about just this?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about this
Piece here.
Okay.
this right here.
And we can have,
I'm not sure what, it's between 4 and 5 acres.
what would be the frontage on it?
It would be, let's see,
Is this it here?
probably about 300.
300 feet.
Well, no, that
Or
would,
not.
that's a dimension.
Okay, all right.
Elsewhere, but it's about, probably about 350 feet frontage. So So there's plenty of frontage, and I don't think there's any other,
Yep.
it's far away from, any, all the water down in here, all the ponds. So that's,
Yeah.
just kind of bring it in to show you what we'll be doing, and hopefully you'll have the surveying and stuff done before too long. So, well, I'm pushing the later part of 80s, and it's time to make a move.
Riding by, it looks like a nice lot.
It actually is a. This is looking down toward Beal's property down here. And back in here, these are gentle slopes. And you get a nice view of Kearsarge down here and the double heads over here. From down in our place, we get a good view of the double heads, but we don't see Kearsarge at all because of the trees. So this is actually a very nice lot. And so
Yeah, it's a nice gradual incline too.
the soil test back here, so there's good soil, and there's a good place for a septic system right in here. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. So I guess that's, like I said, I'm just kind of introduce myself to the planning board, and you'll have some engineering work coming forth.
Sounds great.
And,
Yeah, this looks like pretty straightforward.
yeah, I've worked with Dick Bennett on all this stuff, and he just told me start here with the planning board. Thank you.
How's the parking bit up there?
How's it what?
Parking for the South Doublehead Trail. Anybody, a lot of people up there? I've caught a couple people, but
Well, the parking lot works out well,
good.
but you still get lazy hikers that want to park right there in front of the doublehead. Now,
Yeah, I've dropped a couple
no
cards
path.
on them occasionally,
You know,
let them know that we're looking at them, but
But other than that, I think the parking lots work real well.
good.
That's worked out well for everybody.
Okay,
All right, cool. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Hey, I have a question for John.
John?
Good question.
Does he have,
Is this yours, Sean?
make sure he has the checklist.
Checklist.
So that you get, cross your Ts and dot your Is.
Oh, okay.
You do have a checklist.
Who
I'm
is
sure
it?
Kevin does.
Kevin will get it.
Okay, Kevin, I've talked with him already, and he's gonna take care of everything, and,
Yeah, he knows the drill.
yeah.
Oh, great, yeah, I'm sure they're good. I just want to make sure, nothing stands in the way,
Yeah,
leave something out.
yeah. No, they're good people down there. I said for engineering, for everybody knows Taj, or we know somebody, Ed, and we know each other from the church and stuff like that. So it's a pleasure to work with a nice group, So,
Well, we appreciate you stopping by.
okay.
That was the sign-in sheet. The book was ours.
Okay.
I was just using it as a thing for the sign-in sheet.
All right,
Okay, so we're going ahead, huh?
that was easy.
So now we're on to the fun topic.
Oh, boy, yes.
And if you didn't bring the groundwater that Sarah sent yesterday,
Actually, it's a color map.
I know I have a colored one too, so I'll share my colored one down here.
Pass it around. This is done by North Country Council, which, and with the information, I asked her to put the actual locations of the wellheads. And there's more wellheads here than there are purple circles around them. So I'm wondering if some of these wellheads whether there is a protective radius around them and that just doesn't show, or just what the situation is. But what is most troubling to me is the fact that she has the Jackson Water Precinct there with no protective watershed around it. And so that's something we need to figure out.
Would that be part of this, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is defining, you're right, in the beginning there, you have to define the groundwater protection district, which is all the areas that are the aquifer. And since we're way up at the head of the aquifer, we just have little bits of, you can see the blue part. Well, it looks gray on the.
Yeah, I think it's the darkest, the blue.
It's the blue part, which is just along the Wildcat and along the Ellis, and then in town, just the center part of town down here. And then you see down the bottom, when you go down into Bartlett, that it becomes much more extensive as you go down into the flat floodplain of the where the Saco comes down through. I just to stay on this, trying to figure out what the groundwater protection district would be. It's both the aquifer and the wellheads, and the protection, the watershed that if you dumped a pollutant into it, if it got into the groundwater, then it would affect the well. So the whole point of this ordinance is to be proactive. In other words, recognize where your areas are that are provide your safe drinking water, and then to protect them, and not let any adverse activities happen within that area that would produce your drinking water. And as you've read through it, you can see that there's prohibited uses, and I'll just go through it. You have the definitions, and you have the defining the district, which then would be the map, which we still need to do some refinements on. But then permitted uses, which would be anything that's permitted in the district, underlying district, but they have to conform with the performance standards, which is listed in section 7. And those are basically regulated substances, which is defined by, there's a list, it's a federal list in 40 CFR 302, which is in one of the documents that accompanies the model ordinance. And it is several pages long, 2 columns, fine print. In other words, there's a lot of them. But I think even the ordinary citizen would be able to say, oh, well, that's probably protected. Pesticides, petroleum products, and many chemicals. And so land disturbing activities, we have to have outdoor storage areas. You have to, those are regulations to keep them from becoming part of the any stormwater runoff, and so on. And then existing non-conforming uses, can continue without expanding or changing. But you've got to be in compliance. Then on the page 4, is a list of the prohibited uses. In other words, these are uses that would most likely damage, add pollutants and pollutants to the drinking water, which you wouldn't want to have. The exemptions are the sale and transport and use of pesticides, as defined, is exempt from all provisions of this ordinance. And the reason for that is the state says the municipalities can't individually control pesticides. We want to have the pesticide control to cover the whole state, and so that's at the state level. The model ordinance just stopped at, it was exempt from this ordinance. And you thought, oh my goodness, you aren't going to control pesticides, which is, when I checked that, I added the line, but must comply with all state and federal regulations. And so that would cover.
What about golf courses?
Well, the pesticides, they have to be used according to the state regs. And so that's all laid out in the state regulations.
Does the state inspect that?
I don't know.
Because we have 2 golf courses in town, both really in the floodplain.
Right. And that would be, I think, in the discussion of all these groundwater protection ordinances, they talk about, it's not just getting the language, in your ordinance, but more important is an education campaign, and to educate those, the managers of the golf courses and various, we don't have industry, but various, businesses that have for their business a certain chemical in greater than 5 gallon containers that they really need to be to realize what the regulations are and how they can be safe and in most cases it'd be protecting their own water source, because if they're storing something in their building and their well is nearby, they're in the protective the groundwater protective area. And I talked with Kevin Bennett earlier, and he knows of several instances of some storage tanks that really need to be taken care of. I asked him to come tonight, and I got an email late this afternoon saying that he couldn't come because he had to take his father to a medical situation that had just come up. So I've asked him to give me a call tomorrow so that we could get his input as to what he feels about this, about the ordinance, the wording of it, and to be able to answer any questions that we come up with. So golf courses then is one question.
Yeah, one of the thoughts I had reading this and going through some of the, particularly transfer of fuels from storage tanks, is refueling of vehicles, and kind of the things that came to mind were, for example, Jackson Ski Touring has vehicles that I don't know how they fuel them, or what they use for fuel, or how they fuel them, but I know they don't drive them down to the gas station that's here.
They have storage tanks.
So they have storage tanks, and the question is, are those storage tanks the kind of thing that would be regulated here through this?
It depends on where they would be located, if they're in.
Well, they're definitely within their garage is right in the middle of the purple.
Yeah, right, the Eagle exactly. And so that, and for those, you have exemptions here. And well, also then conditional uses. That would probably be a conditional use, and they would then have to comply with, well, they have to have a spill prevention and control plan, and they'd have to store them on an impervious surface and be able to contain a spill to keep it from going into the groundwater. And so those regulations are spelled out here.
Would any of the, like the town garage or the fire station be involved in this? I mean, for example, I know the storage tank behind the,
I'm sure they're up to code.
pardon?
I'm sure they're up to code and everything.
Oh, you're sure?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
Well, they,
municipality, we kind of have to do that stuff.
When I went by to look at this stuff, I'm not a code guy, but I looked at them and they don't look like they're up to code. They look like they're definitely in need of some updating.
it depends on, are they, if they're on an impervious surface.
And they may be
they're
on,
covered,
well,
covered
yeah,
from the, protected from the elements, so
Yeah.
that you don't get any rainwater coming down on them and then running off,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
yeah. Maybe they deal with the impervious underneath, possibly.
I'm sure Kevin
Yeah.
would probably know.
Yeah,
Right, well, he's-
well, I know when I went to the fire station review, that section, updating that section looked like a critical part of the benefit and advantage of making some of the changes, is that we would bring that up to compliance. Which suggested to me that it might not be in compliance right now. Just the way it was rephrased, it suggested maybe we're not 100%. Although it might be satisfactory.
Right.
Don't know.
And the one thing I was hoping Kevin could be with us tonight to let us know what controls are already in place at the state level, and I'm sure there's quite a few. All I've done is to go through this model ordinance and get it, well, as I told you before, is that I just took what they had written, what DES had written as a model ordinance, and just organized it so that it made sense, and then to format it so that it would be the same formatting as our zoning ordinance. And the other section that I had in blue, besides the district, was who is going to be the person who does the inspection or has to approve the spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan. And in the ordinance, in the model ordinance, it says emergency management officer, a health inspector, fire chief, you pick, and Kevin, in addition to being the building inspector, is also the health inspector, and it probably makes sense to have him there. Or we could say health inspector or somebody approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, there's other language here that you have more appropriately identified, like the hydrogeologist or blah, 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 or the language is such that if we could use similar language as that, that says, the health inspector or whomever approved by the Board of Selectmen. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of determining who that person is or how you're gonna be able to do that. But again, it should be identified as to what we think it's gonna be, and I guess then the question really for the Board of Selectmen is, do they feel that this is, unreasonable? I think we only have 2 or 3 opportunities for any kind of compliance right now. So it doesn't seem like it should be onerous. Unless we don't have anyone on staff who can actually do the work, can actually perform the function.
We'd have to get somebody who has that kind of expertise.
Right.
And that's why I kind of look toward Kevin, because he, all the people that I've chatted with, which is not that many, he seemed to be the one who would know more about at least the state regulations and the types of situations that he deals with.
But it sounds like he would also have to enforce this through inspections when
Through
necessary.
inspections, right. And it's,
Who pays for those inspections?
The landowner.
Does it say that in there?
Oh, yeah, it does. On Q14.4, it says the Board of Selectmen may require a fee for compliance inspections, and the fee shall be paid by the property owner. And a fee schedule shall be established by the Board of Selectmen as provided for an RSA 41-9:A.
but the big thing is, trying to educate all those businesses and individuals that might have these types of substances in a larger quantity than, I think it's the 5 gallon containers.
Did I read this right?
It looks like,
Go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say, it looks, according to the map, it looks like, Black Mountain ski area might be impacted.
Right, because of the wells, both Black Mountain's wells and the condos.
And maybe the Davises as well.
Right. Now, I want to find out why, what the protective radius would be for the Jackson Water Precinct. And Dick, you may remember this. I was cleaning out a bunch of old files and came across the Jackson Water Precinct Watershed District that was considered by the Planning Board in 2003. And I then checked to see, it never got enacted. And so I did a little research back in 2003, started with the town reports, and I think you were chairman of the planning board and wrote the report for the year 2002, I believe it was. And you said that the several things that were discussed as possible amendments to the zoning ordinance was a groundwater protection district. I don't know if you have any memory of that. And
I remember the discussion. I don't have any specific memories of, where we got to with it. But I do remember we had entered some discussion about it, but I also remember that it never went anywhere.
right, well, I have, it looks like a draft. Being a pack rat, I saved it. And I've been trying to go through all of these files that has a lot of information that I really doesn't really pertain anymore, but this one I thought, well, it does. And I guess it turned out that that year there were a number of zoning amendments that we had, and I was wanting to check I just noticed that we have a copy of all of the minutes going back till the beginning of time, to see if there was any mention in the minutes as to why this never was taken any further. Whether it was a case because there's too many other things on the docket at that point, and we just didn't have the bandwidth to deal with this. Or
I think that we just picked what we thought either would go through or the most important things at the moment. I don't remember exactly why that got shuffled aside.
But anyway, what they define for, and this is just for the water precinct, and it may be because this is just focusing on one aspect of town, that if you have an ordinance, it's got to apply to the whole town, even though, you know, we could have, as with an overlay district, it shows which sections of town that the ordinance applies to. But the way they define it is 500 feet either side of the, what they're calling the reference line, as defined in RSA 483, which I think probably means that with the stream, are you define it as the thread of the stream or the high water mark or what? So you have to have a line that you're measuring your 500 feet from, but 500 feet on either side, and that, so the protected area, I'm sorry, I got the wrong dimension here, is the area within the 300 feet of the reference line of the Ellis River and 200 feet of the reference line of any tributary to the river. And then they talk about a restricted area is 200 feet from the reference line of the Ellis and 100 feet from any of the tributaries. So you have a narrow zone right next to the river where you have, you know, quite protected, and then 300 feet on either side, which would be protected but not to the same degree. And I'm wondering whether we could use, whether that makes sense to use that measurement for the protection of, for the water precinct. And how does the water precinct, they used to take the water out of the river, but now I think they're taking it from underneath the river? Do you know, Dick?
I don't think they've changed the intake system. I think it still comes directly from the river.
Okay, well, that's something else we need to find.
Now, if it comes from, you know, if they have an intake under the river or below the level of the bottom of the river, I don't know.
It's not directly from the river itself. But it is from.
It's from the groundwater.
It's from the groundwater that,
underneath the river.
yes.
So anything that's coming down in the watershed would affect it.
Actually, you have an in-house expert who knows the answer to that question.
Nobody knows what the intake is, but.
No, I'm serious. We talked about it at
Conservation.
at the Jackson Ski Tour.
Yes.
So yeah, he has made mention of it.
All right, so this is something that I'll just have to get more information from, well, Water Precinct for one, and then there is a contact down at DES, is the fellow who gave the webinar a few weeks ago that I attended, and Chris Macular attended. And there, I think we can still get the replay of it. I gave everyone the link to that if you want to watch it. And that was a good background as to, you know, why we're doing this. The example they gave on that webinar was a town, I think it was Milton, that had a major spill, and it took them a very high price tag just to clean it up. And then that land around where the spill was has been degraded, and obviously doesn't have the value it used to have. And so that's what you're trying to prevent, is having a major pollution situation. Which I think we can do. If you look at the map, it's really not all that much of Jackson. that would be affected. But obviously it's in the part where it's, the population is the densest.
We should really try to engage somebody from the water precinct, because, you know, that's a huge water drop-off in our town, so I think their input would be really important.
Right, well, we can contact Scott Hayes and get his input.
Well, I know, and all we can do is invite them, we can't force them in here. But,
No.
I think they should, you know, attend one meeting, or, you know, even on Zoom, you know, just in case they have any reservations mostly, or they could have ideas on how we should structure the wording. So we should kind of reach out to them and see if they would like to attend one session.
The only thing I have about that, you might want to do it Zoom. Without pointing fingers, there are some people in town that aren't vaccinated.
Understood. And, well, at least I could have a telephone conversation with him and at least get the information as to how the water precinct is getting their water and what would be the best way to protect their input.
We're also coming across some time deadlines.
Understood.
So the question I have is whether or not we can pull this together in time for,
Or when would we have to have a public hearing?
We have to post and publish the notice for first hearing by January 6th. We have to post, that's the last day to post a published notice. Last day. Basically a month,
Yeah.
more or less.
What do people think? I mean, is this, as far as the wording goes, I mean, I think our biggest bottleneck is actually defining what the district is.
Right.
Do we have any, some feedback on the wording of the ordinance? Is there anything here that people feel is, shouldn't be in there, or are we missing something?
I have one question, Sarah.
Yeah?
It's not a large point, but under exemptions, I think it's Q 10.2.
Oh, you're talking about definitions?
No, exemptions.
No, exemptions, section 10, or Q 10.
Oh, it's
Q
10.
10 too.
Q10. To
Underground storage tanks.
underground storage systems and above-ground storage tanks that are in compliance are
Right,
exempt?
storage of what, I guess is my question.
That's a good point.
Should that list controlled? The other ones list pesticide, fuel, that one doesn't, you know, it just says underground storage tank system, above ground storage tank.
Probably
What's be?
referring to, well, what do we store in underground storage system? For the most part, it's fuel, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, oil and propane.
Oh, yeah, petroleum products.
Petroleum
yeah.
products. Do we have, I mean, what else would be stored that would be potentially harmful to the
I don't know, I just think there's the other.
Well, I mean, if you want to be flip, you
listed
could
one.
say your septic system is a storage tank. I mean, you know, someone's gonna be really smart-assed about it.
It's just defined as
if-
fuel.
But if they're, what they're
I
saying,
would think that they're above ground storage tanks for a variety of things,
right,
not
but
just fuel.
it says, well, storage tanks that are in compliance with the applicable state rules. So if you're in compliance already by this, as far as the state is concerned, then you're okay as far as Jackson. Is that,
Regardless of what's being stored.
I suppose, yeah.
And so then my second question on the next one,
Yep,
for example, we have a propane tank, an outdoor propane tank. I guess I don't know if it has control, leak detection, and secondary containment, etc. But
For propane or gas?
Propane has its own regulations, and they're state regulated, and they need
so
to.
it's not considered a heating fuel.
Well, it is a heating fuel, but it's totally controlled by. If you ever have a leak, it's never going to contaminate your groundwater because it's going to leak into the air.
and if you have a spark, you're gonna have a serious fire problem.
Yeah, the worst you're going to have is burn your house down.
Right. Well, it's just that in the section it says heating fuels. I assumed that propane was a heating fuel, but didn't think that the tank I'm using might have all the
Oh,
So we
controls listed in this section.
Yeah.
yeah.
You're talking about
Yeah.
oil.
Hmm?
The
Oil burners.
supplier is really the eyes and ears for the state on that. They usually won't fill a tank that's non-compliant. And they have it pretty well worked out, all the safeties that are supposed to be in place.
I mean, which is my assumption. It's just,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that the tank happened to, apply to that particular section. The secondary, with the leak detection system, secondary containment, etc.
Well, there's an or there.
That's the date, right?
It says, provided that they are
13.
Yeah.
indoors, on a concrete floor, or have corrosion control, leak detection, and secondary containment in place. In other words, if you have it outside, you have to have it on.
Right, so my propane tank is outside.
Yeah, but
And above ground.
above ground, yeah. But it's propane.
Right.
Right, but it's a
Yeah.
heating fuel.
Right.
It seems like the language is a little loose, I guess.
All right, we could say liquid, but then gasoline can vaporize, etc.
Well, propane's liquid propane.
Liquid, yeah, it's already liquid, but then you take it off, reduce the pressure, it then goes into the gaseous state. Remember Boyle's law, STP.
But to Scott's other point that John said, do we want to use the word petroleum in Q10? Do we just want to make it clear? Because it doesn't say.
Oh, for both 2 and 3,
Put it in there and take out any kind of question.
Yeah.
yeah, petroleum. Well, I think on 2, you could leave it as is, because if you say petroleum fuels, then that eliminates anything else. If you happen to have it, a storage tank of some
Petroleum products.
Just say petroleum product.
Yeah.
So instead of heating fuels for Q3, you just say petroleum products?
Because that could be paints. You have more than 5 gallons of paint potentially if you were a business or doing a job on your house. Certainly 5 gallons of paint won't do it.
I mean, in 2, at least it does have the compliance with applicable state rules, parts.
Yes.
Whatever you're storing, still needs to be in compliance.
But it's interesting, Q10.3 actually points out that they're indoors, that they're not outdoor tanks.
Sorry, say it again, David?
On Q10.3, it says, provided that storage tanks are indoors on a concrete floor. So they're very specific here that they actually say it has to be indoors. So an outdoor tank isn't relevant to 10.3.
it's not exempt.
Well, it says storage tanks are indoors on concrete floor
Right.
or have corrosion. Is the or concrete floor or corrosion control, or is it indoors on concrete floor or outdoors with corrosion control?
I think it's
Well,
concrete
that's
floor
where they
or
go from.
corrosion control.
Storage is heating.
And this is
So on
just,
that one, I was mistaken. I was reading the or as
Scott,
I'm
it did,
reading indoor.
remember, we're talking about exemptions.
Mhm.
So this, you can be pretty specific as to, this particular situation is exempt from the performance standard. And if you're not in that particular situation, then you have to comply with the performance standards. And this is saying that this, for Q10.3, it's exempt from performance standard 7.8, which is, where they have to be secured against unauthorized entry by means of a door, gate, and when authorized personnel are not present, it must be inspected weekly. So they're saying, if you have this situation, you don't have to go through all of that. Inspection and locking it up, et cetera.
Yep.
So I would leave it as heating fuels.
yeah.
Yep.
I think that it's satisfactory as is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You asked for feedback on this. I read through a second, now I've read through, I think, 6 times on this. And yeah, I do have questions about how it actually applies when rubber hits the road and somebody says, we have this in place, and I am a manager for a construction company and I'm doing business here in Jackson. How does this apply to me?
Yep.
Those are the kinds of things that just reading this, you don't really get a good sense of what it means to someone to make sure that they're in compliance. However, none of this is different from what is required by the state. And it is really distilling it down to a zoning ordinance language that simplifies, and if you took a look at the original package, which I also read, and the 200 pages of this material. And the 200 pages of material refer to about 10,000 pages of material that's in the various guidelines and
Yeah,
things.
it's on best management practices and.
Yeah, so this is a distillation, there's no question. Anybody who says, well, gee, it could be better here or there, and it's like, the RSAs that are referenced or the state guidance that's referenced is substantially more detailed. And by having this in place, it gives us the opportunity to ensure that we locally can control our opportunities to have compliance, as opposed to having to go out to a state person and say, can you pay attention to us, ollie in free. And the fact is that most often the state is going to respond quickly to something that's like this, simply because of the hazards that are involved. But being able to do it on a proactive basis, to your point, is just having it in place and being proactive about it, as opposed to the state guidelines are pretty much out there, but who pays attention? If you're a licensed person and you're involved in that and you know about it, yeah, you're going to be, to Dick's point, if you're a fuel provider, you're going to bend over backwards to make sure you're doing everything in compliance. And hopefully most businesses understand what their requirements are. Not everybody does. So I guess having this in place, and the reason why the folks are pushing for this is so that we do a better job of making sure people who may not be aware are aware. And also, for example, Dick, if you were working on this, and Sarah, you're working back in 2002-03 on this, and you didn't have an overall view, you could probably put together something that just applied to the one district.
Right.
And by having this in place, then you enable yourself to actually provide more protections for the folks who are in that special area, and giving them another opportunity to be able to have protection for their water. And that's the whole purpose, really. I mean, get down to it.
Well, I really like the idea of getting something in place, because like all of our work, I mean, it's gonna move as we go on. I mean, we've got years to look at it and sort through it, but if we get something in place now, I think it would be very beneficial to the town.
When we looked at the original document, or not the original one,
Yeah,
the
the
example
original
from Hart
model, yeah.
location, they clearly exempt residential and really focused on commercial.
Right.
Do you think they did that? Because I'm reading this, and this has to do the public has to understand this if they're going to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Hart location did just commercial to make it easier to get it passed? Because now we're not saying you as Sarah, you as Jim and your property. We're now saying it's the ego, it's the commercial industries that we want to make sure are doing their part in making sure my drinking water is.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read this.
But everybody has fuel, that's the thing.
No, I would like it to do residential, but.
Right. That's the thing we're trying to protect, I think. I mean, yeah, the commercial, like Dick said, they're gonna, you know, the guys who come and deliver the stuff, they're all knowledgeable of what
Yep.
goes on. It's myself who are ignorant about how these things go on. You know, it's one resident that makes a bad mistake, you know.
Trust me,
I agree with Sarah. It's an awareness thing more than anything else. I think that's the big thing. It really is an awareness.
Yeah.
And you know, putting the policy out there. I mean, it's going to be hard to enforce. Kevin isn't going to go into people's backyards to see if they have their tanks all properly, unless he's asked. You know, it's not going to be investigating anything like that. It's just something that we have in the books, and we can use it if something happens.
Right, and
You know,
if
that's
you
the idea.
get a complaint, someone says, well, I got this really bad smell,
Right.
and looking over at his tank, I'm not sure that that's in compliance. And that's when you go to
The process starts.
go into the process.
Yeah. John, you've been doing a lot of business with Chris Hurley on having ordinances in place that I think provide him the opportunity to have something to work with if he has a complaint.
Right. That's kind of the basis of it.
And not necessarily that you're going to constantly be in the business of trying to make people comply to every single letter of every single ordinance we have out there. Mm-hmm. And I see this as being something similar.
I agree.
I don't know. I don't perceive when I first heard of doing this, it was kind of like, well, do we really have, really? Do we have an issue here in Jackson? Do we really have that much aquifer? Do we really have that much that we're going to contribute to the overall groundwater protection? And The answer is, no, we don't have a lot of exposure, but we're also part of the overall aquifers, and we're part of the overall groundwater in the valley. And so we can't just say, not us.
Right.
For the most part, we're upstream from everybody.
Yeah, we are upstream, so if we screw up, it,
Right,
I don't want to quote, what is that about what goes downstream?
yes.
Anyway,
But the general public, I don't think understands. For years, I've been telling people, because people use Drano on a regular basis. That all goes into the septic tank. It doesn't go away. And the chemicals they're using on the lawns, because they come up, they put up $1 million home, they've got to have the perfect lawn. So they have to use all these chemicals, and it's all around their wellhead and their neighbors. And, you know, eventually, it just seems like we're going to run into some issues with that. The more people that are using that and aren't, you know, trying to be safe with what they use for chemicals around the house, because they don't look at them as chemicals. They think they're safe.
I don't think this is gonna do anything for that.
No, it's not. It's not. But I'm saying that's something that I wish that,
Great.
you know, I wish that we could make people aware of. I try with customers, but they want the perfect lawn, they don't care, and they want to keep putting the Drano down their drains.
Yeah, they're worried about what their own property looks like, they don't care where it
Yeah.
goes downstream.
Well,
Right.
it's gonna go into their
It's
own
going to go
well.
into their well too.
Yeah.
You know. And a lot of lots up here, like up on Tyrol, are so small.
Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to have, I just can't believe we're not going to have issues up there with septics and wells.
All right, I think we should move forward.
Okay, Yeah.
I think if we can figure out some way to get the folks in from the
I'll,
water district and be able to define that on the map, that'd be great. And have some way to get that into the mapping.
How does this affect fuel tanks on the back of contractors' trucks? Diesel fuel and gas?
I mean that for the truck?
It's not.
They're traveling,
Here it
yeah.
says with a, you know, with a fuel line attached to the truck, but they're not. They're separate fuel lines because they're filling either lawnmowers
Lawnmower equipment.
or big equipment.
It's interesting.
And I don't know how big those tanks are. What are they, about 25 gallons?
I could guess, I don't know.
Yeah. And because I don't see anything that questions that. And maybe it's not an issue.
Well, they talk about that if you're moving the petroleum from one tank to another, that it should be done over an impervious surface. Of course, then that makes me wonder about people getting fuel to go into their tank for their furnace. And so it's going from the tank through the nozzle into your receptacle, and that doesn't necessarily have an impervious surface underneath it.
No.
But then you say, well, who's running the tank, that he has protocol he has to go by. So, you know, maybe we're covered by that, I don't know.
Well, when I read through this, I don't see anything that suggests that this applies to it. I mean, you can,
Q 7.3. Maybe what you're thinking about.
All transfers of petroleum from delivery trucks and storage containers over 5 gallons in capacity shall be conducted over an impervious surface having a positive limiting barrier at its perimeter.
Well, because in a lot of cases, that can't be because the big equipment's on a job site.
Yep.
But I suppose, you know, the more things you put into us, the more complicated it gets. And we have to start someplace.
Now, that would probably be outside storage containers, right?
Well, it says is storage containers over 5 gallons in capacity. So technically, that would be going into your fuel tank that's down in your basement next to your furnace.
And that may be why they said no residential property. I'm looking for, trying to not create an ordinance that implodes the moment it's out there.
I mean, I'm covered.
Well, you can always write an exception for filling, homeowners' tanks, in home tanks, whatever you want to word it,
That
That's the big issue, I think, is,
Right.
I mean, that's a no-brainer, really. I mean, those guys, like you said, have protocols to fill those things, they know how to do it. And it is a pretty safe proposition. I mean, they haven't had any spills that I know of.
Now, you could add a phrase in here, Shelby, about doing it according to best management practices.
That would work.
Just under 7.3.
Yeah.
And you need a definition of what best management practices are.
No,
Does
that's,
that change from week to or year to year, according to the trucks and the style?
Probably.
If you do it generic, you cover yourself every year. If you just get too
Yeah,
detailed, then you have to change it every time that the
yeah,
rules change.
that's the
yeah,
point. Yeah.
is there a question for you on Q74? I think you got all the corrections, so we can, but is the WE 604, is
It
that a,
is.
is
I
that
looked that up, yes.
that's a real thing?
Right, it's the water well board rules, and those were all WE whatever.
Cool.
So then we have, it depends on what Department of DES as to what
Okay,
their code is.
yeah,
I kept running into that as,
I got to the water well site, and then and that's where I kind of ran into issues.
and this is, a pretty specific situation. Land disturbing activities, and so any inactive wells on the property. Well, when are we gonna run into that? I mean, how many times?
Well, I've got it yellowed because we have something coming up on it to the ZBA, and I went up and discussed it with Kevin the other day, and I believe he said there's 2 inactive wells on the property, and they want to make the septic better. And so they would, I don't know, because I haven't looked at where it's going yet, but it's, I'm just wondering if those wells may have to be filled in, which they have the equipment there. They may end up doing it anyway, because 2 of them are dug, one's drilled.
Yeah. Okay, so you have to seal it in accordance to whatever the rule 604 is.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Whatever WE 604 requires, yeah. I'm glad I'm not in this business.
Yeah.
So, not to be the bearer of bad news, but our next meeting, official meeting, is after the deadline to submit notices. Last day to submit a notice is January 6th. The last day to post a notice, and our meeting is January 13th.
Special meeting.
So, I'm just throwing it out there that we'll probably have to have one in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I could make that one.
can do the research to try to refine the map here. The map is made by the GIS person up at North Country Council. And I have a feeling that she takes the information that she gets from, I asked her to list all the sources here, which is listed at the bottom. And she would take that and just do the GIS work, and this is what you've got. So she wouldn't be the one to ask it. She will change the map. If I say we need to add X, Y, and Z, she will add it. So I'll try to see if we can get it resolved as to what all the wellhead protection districts are, and especially for the water precinct. And if it makes sense to have it a corridor around the Ellis, to have that as part of the protected district, then just add that to the map. If that makes sense.
Now, isn't the Ellis protected all the way to the Saco, even through Bartlett?
Protected by whom?
As far as restricted to how close you can build to it and what you can do on the banks. I saw a brand new house the other day
By
in Bartlett.
state
It's just
regulation?
across the line.
Yeah.
It's maybe 12 feet from the bank. But I don't think Bartlett has.
I thought you had to be a certain distance away from any active waterway.
Yeah. I don't know how they got it so close.
Well, the
It's a
shoreline.
tiny lot.
The Shoreline Protection Act, which is a state act, is, I think you've got to be like 100 feet away from a body of water.
No, and nowhere near it.
Unless it was grandfathered.
I was gonna say, yeah.
The lot was grandfathered.
Yeah.
I talked to the person that sold it.
That may be.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And so you have two setbacks,
Hmm.
you know, from the water or from the road, and so that,
Yep.
which overlap.
I just granted them a variance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, 'cause it doesn't affect us. It's in Bartlett. And I just thought they.
yeah, well, you know, look up Shoreline Protection Act for the state, 'cause I know that comes into play. You know,
It's good reading if you have insomnia.
Yes. Seldom have insomnia.
so are we feeling that, leave the wording as it is, and what we need to, firm up is the actual map?
Yep.
You agree with the health inspector, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a health inspector.
or
Who
other
doesn't?
qualified professional is determined by the Board of Selectmen.
Sounds good.
So you're still gonna change Q 7-3, then the best management practices?
Yeah. I'll do that. This is,
So do we need to vote tonight then to have to do this, or do we need to set a separate meeting for the public hearing? Can we agree to bring this to a public hearing with noted adjustments?
We have an opportunity to have a second public hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the notice for a public hearing is January 6th. The last day to hold your first public meeting is January 17th.
Oh, okay.
So it's the notice that has to go out by the 6th, that we are going to have a public meeting, and the 17th is the last day you can have that. So between the 6th and the 17th is when you have your first public meeting. And then the 20th is your last day to publish your second final meeting, and January 31st is your last day to have
I didn't
it.
think, I thought it was very quick when you said the
Yes,
sixth.
yeah, quick turnaround.
Yeah, I thought there was more time there.
No, that's the notice. Last year when we did the short-term rental, we put it out the week of Christmas is when we put the
And
notice
we're,
out.
we're gonna need to do these public hearings anyway for the short-term rental language
Right.
that we're proposing. So we're gonna need to spend the money to do the notice of public hearing, so
How much do we have to give out at the notice? Do we have to give the whole wording?
no,
You just
No,
have to
it's
say
just-
it's going to, it's summary of what it's going to be,
yes.
establishing a groundwater protection district.
Then we'll have to have these.
Yeah.
But we have to actually have something that they can refer to on this.
At the
Yeah.
the hearing, but we
Yes.
don't have to have that actually prepared when we do the notice?
Not the notice, no.
Not then, okay, so yes, if we're definitely going to do this, then we can give the notice. And you have everything prepared before the meeting, before the public meeting.
Right, and we can hold our regular meeting prior to the public hearing
Right,
Right,
in order to make that all work.
okay.
Okay.
sounds good.
Does that work?
Yep,
Everybody agree?
yep.
All right, cool. You guys too?
I fell asleep.
Oh,
Can't tell whether Dick's awake or sleeping the way he's laying there.
all right,
Okay.
Sarah, good work.
Yeah, great.
It's not done yet.
Yeah, I know, but still. That's called encouragement. Good work.
The next one is the subdivision land. I'd just like to switch those two because I think the short-term rental will be easier for us to discuss and approve. I made copies of what Peter, this is, again, I forgot you guys weren't gonna be here, but you may have gotten that email. Scott, you definitely got the email because it was sent to you from Peter. I mean, I'll read it out loud, but this is the language that Peter suggested and the place in the ordinance that Peter suggested that we place it is under the application section of the ordinance.
Right, everyone received this back in October,
Yes.
originally, when we had the conversation.
Okay, so this is just when they sell the property.
Right, it was the deal with the transfer of the, which really just to make him give us another application to do it. And it's in, yeah, it's under, the application process, and C is like the owner of the short-term rental unit should provide proof of insurance, proof of the meal tax. This would just be D, if the property, because the question was, the conditional use permit runs with the property, but we want another application.
Mhm. Are we assuming that if the new owner does not want to continue with the short-term rental, that he doesn't do an application?
Yeah.
Because everything else before that applies to it. We're just assuming that
The
he,
only other question I had around the language is whether or not, the question you asked before, is whether or not, the Board of Selectmen can require a fee. And do you think we need to, again, assign or identify a fee for this reapplication?
Yeah, for the new person, yes, the new
Yeah.
owner has to pay the fee, yeah.
And so the question is whether or not that fee should be the same fee as somebody applying first time, or whether or not it should be just a schedule you guys determine. What do you think?
Just the first time.
I think it should just be the
First fee.
application fee.
Yeah,
The regular fee, so it's,
Yeah.
So it's starting
Whatever
with-
it was.
That's a brand new owner, so brand new.
yeah. I'm just wanting to bring it up because
makes
someone's
sense.
gonna ask the damn question and we should be able to answer it.
Mhm.
If it requires the same amount of office work on our part, then it should be the same fee.
And the fees are pretty reasonable anyway.
Not too bad, no.
Yeah, and Peter said if there's an RSA that covers you. So does everybody agree on the
Sure.
language from Peter?
I guess my concern is the language does not suggest, it just says they need to provide the town, doesn't say they need to
Reapply.
apply or they need to pay a fee or anything like that. So there's no, I guess if I did an affidavit and sent it in to you, where does this say that you have to pay a fee?
You know, if you read this objectively, the permit runs with the land.
Mhm.
So if you buy the land, the permit is still there.
Yes, the conditional use permit.
Oh, for sure, yes,
Yes.
that's true.
So why would a person have to reapply?
Reapply for the application.
Right, okay,
not-
got it.
Because the affidavit is the application.
Yeah,
And in the ordinance on 4432, it does specify the $150 is an application fee.
okay.
It doesn't, but is the application fee for the conditional use permit? Or is the application fee for,
Yeah.
I guess if I'm reading this and I want to be a real pain in the back end, it doesn't say I need to pay a fee.
Maybe the permit shouldn't run with the land then.
It has to,
it has to,
It has
by
to.
law,
Yeah.
by law, state law.
But I think we can put wordage in there that says we're gonna take a fee from them, because we have to go through the process of checking out their ad, making sure that, it's the fee, the application affidavit is all done properly. I mean, this is all, work that the girls have to do in the office here, so I think
Yep.
that's fee worthy.
I agree. Yes, that's.
So I think we just put some wordage in there, verbiage that says that, that's all.
Yep.
I think that answers that.
Can we
Have to
see,
make it more clear to me.
can
If
we,
it was
can we
language
seal the
specifying fee.
Q14.4 language? I mean, here, where it says the board of selectmen,
You want to say may require a fee? Or shall require?
shall require.
Shall.
Agreeing to the conditions of the
And
permit.
the fee should
And
be
the
paid by
fee-
the property owner, fee schedule.
what do you,
Because it doesn't run on a calendar year, it runs off of when they give us the application, the thing's good for
Right.
1 year. So if they, if somebody buys a house on July 1st, it's good to June 30th or whatever.
Couldn't you just put a comma after permit and say, and pay the appropriate fee? Or
With their contact information, the new affidavit agreement, conditions of permit, and
pay the required fee?
pay the required fee.
Application fee.
Yeah.
right.
Right. You may decide as selectmen that you want to change the fee.
Right.
Because it's a pretty small fee, $150.
So you get rid of the.
Because the affidavit is in the application, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
So I
no,
mean, they go together.
Yeah.
My feeling is that we ought to be telling them, we're gonna charge them a fee, not because it's a conditional use permit that runs with the land, but we need to charge a fee because Julie's
Processing.
gonna process.
Processing
We
fee.
call it a processing fee,
There we go, processing fee.
yeah. So
Yeah,
then- and-
Processing, application processing fee. whichever way you wanna write that.
Do commercial businesses pay a higher tax rate than commercial real estate over private real estate? They don't.
Based on value.
Based on value.
No, they don't, not in the state.
Yeah.
In some states they do.
Some states they do, you're right,
Yeah.
but not this one.
So what do we,
Sounds
And
good?
your property is nicer than mine, so yeah, you get to,
Your house is nicer.
so, we get to assess you at a higher rate, and that's your tax. You pay a higher tax.
so just comment and will require the application fee.
Yeah,
Will be
Like you
required to
said,
provide to the
John.
town.
if the
Right,
staff is
with
having to do the work, there should
Still
be
the
a
same amount
fee.
of work, yes, still
Yeah.
the same amount of work, basically. Maybe a
Wherever
little bit,
we-
maybe a little bit less because they're familiar with the property, but
Yeah,
that would be
They'll
the
be
only thing.
required to provide the town with their, and what are the things they need to provide? It's their contact information, a new affidavit, agreeing to the conditions of the permit and the permit processing fee, and pay the permit processing fee. That's what they're
Okay.
required to do.
I like that wording better.
This John's word. I just wrote it down.
Okay,
All right, I'm good with that.
okay,
Sorry to be a pain.
we have to,
Very good. No,
take a vote.
All right,
that's why we do this, is people talk it out, you know?
We have to take a vote. Who's that?
All right, so, can we take a vote then? We want to do that?
I make a motion. Let's-
I have a
let's do it.
motion.
Second.
Second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the short rental modification language. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Done.
Okay. Next, this is housekeeping. I don't think this has to go in. This has to do with the subdivision numbering system that we talked about.
Mhm.
And I did find it, and I did actually print it out old fashioned. I can't read on my iPad like you can. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this document. I tried to read it 100 times to try to figure out where this numbering system would go, because there's nothing in here at all
Oh,
about.
we're talking about the numbering of lots.
Yes.
Okay.
So I read this
Okay.
land subdivision
Gotcha.
regulations,
Yep.
which Dick, your name is at the top of it, by the way.
Uh-oh.
I'm so.
So is yours.
They're my names in there too.
Yeah, yours. I looked at section 9.11
I didn't bring mine, so.
as a possible place that it could go. And all it is talks about, we don't have an official numbering system when you subdivide a lot. We have to agree on a number, like lot 12 would become lot 12-1,
One,
/2.
Is that what they want?
or
It's only agreed.
Instead of A and B,
Yeah, instead of A and
they
B,
don't do it, they don't want to do
Yeah.
letters.
yeah,
Doesn't work well on a computer, that's why.
yeah,
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
that's what we agreed on a couple of weeks ago, but
You think it would work well.
we just need to put it in there. But apparently this doesn't have to go in front of a
No,
public hearing, we can just,
these are our internal rules.
So do they do letters or numbers?
Numbers. all
No.
numbers.
yeah. Because right now you can do anything you want. There's nothing in there that tells you what you have to do. People,
Yeah.
and that's the problem, people make it up. And,
Call them Bo, Larry, and Curly if you want to.
yeah. And so there's no order, so when the tax. guy
more
came out,
commonly letters, isn't it?
He was like, there's no order to how I'm supposed to identify lots and stuff like that, so.
So you're saying put it in section 9, design
Yes.
standards are
Yes, so
required.
do number
ordinance.
11.
Okay, sounds good to me. It's a place for it.
I will,
I mean, I'm just looking at the table of contents for.
I'll send out a proper grammar wording for it, so you can approve it, section 9. Okay. Now on to the, let's see, something else.
No, go ahead. I'll find it before we get up.
I'm moving on to short-term rentals, is that okay?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so we have 3 of them. First one is on Cottage Drive. Let me see what that is. Okay. That is a 3-bedroom with septic approved condo, 3-bedroom tax application incomplete on 11/16. I'm not sure why they send them to us when they're incomplete.
I have no idea what that means.
Which,
I don't know what she's supposed to, what we're supposed to do with these.
Well, there was one in there, and I can't remember if it was that one or Hurlin, where the owner, when it specified an address in New Hampshire, a contact, she gave her address in Falmouth, Maine, and not one in New Hampshire. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's
that's
the
it.
one.
This is the one.
It is
Yeah,
the
so
one.
it's not complete, so we can't
Can't
accept
act on
an
it if it's not
application
complete.
that's incomplete.
Yeah. I mean,
We
Julie
can
points
accept
to
an
this.
application that's, we've agreed that we can accept an application because there's a chicken and egg kind of thing,
Mhm.
where they don't really want to do the ad until they have the approval, so we can't have a copy of the ad because it's a new deal. That makes sense to me, and we can advise this board, selectmen, follow up with the ad. But here, the basic compliance for the requirement for the application is not satisfactory. I don't see that we ought to be
And,
accepting the application.
and this one is also missing the room tax ID.
all right, so it's
Done
not
deal.
complete, so.
Next.
back to the drawing board.
Next,
And
next.
And I think Julie's back next week, so I'll ask her why she's giving us,
Julie Hoyt, yes.
yeah.
Do we have to vote to not accept,
I think so.
or,
Yeah.
so let's have a vote not to accept.
I move,
Motion.
All in favor of not accepting?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Next.
Okay, well, we got another one that's
That's
not complete.
Okay, I'll move that one right off the table.
It says, tax card for 4-bedroom, no septic on file, incomplete, emailed them the notice of incompletion on the December 2nd, and there's nothing more attached to this.
All right, motion,
all right, I move
second.
to refuse that one.
And the motion and second is to not accept the application.
Right,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're good.
Okay, the last one. 3-bedroom with septic approved as a condo also on Hurland Lane. 3-bedroom tax car advertising for 3 bedrooms and sleeps 8. We have all the documentation here. We have the ad, and everything. It's the only one that's got completed.
Discussion? Questions?
Motion.
Motion.
to accept.
Motion to accept.
Yeah, second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Hearing none, it's accepted.
Okay. Did you find what you wrote?
No. But we'll get it.
That's the last thing on the agenda.
All right.
All right.
Anybody want to go home?
I do, I'll make a motion
All
to
right, do
adjourn.
I have a motion to, oh yeah, there it is.
I'm motioning.
All right. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's 32 back there.